Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. I am thankful to all news resources. Following are the news which have been reported by American, Canadian, European, Asian, African, Australian channels and also by news agencies AFP, AP and Reuters. Now the headlines. Pro-Palestinian protests are spreading in American colleges' campuses. Hush money trial of Donald Trump, a key witness takes stand in New York court. Ethnic violence and elections in largest democracy, India. Aid bill for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan is in US Senate. Israel strikes northern and southern Gaza after giving warning for evacuation. Hezbollah of Lebanon and Israel continue fighting. Yesterday, Hezbollah fired a rocket which went inside 10 miles Israeli territory. Norway asked donors to resume donations for Palestinian refugees for United Nations organization UNRWA. Russian court rejected American appeal. 5 migrants died crossing English Channel. British Parliament approved bill deporting illegal immigrants to Rwanda. Migrants in southern Paris. Labor rules in Supreme Court. TikTok sale or ban. On Wall Street, Nasdaq, Dow Jones Industrial, S&P 500 all went up. Now the news in detail.
Like this before. Tonight, Trump on trial. Ex-tabloid publisher David Pecker telling jurors about a secret deal between him and Donald Trump to bury negative stories during the 2016 presidential campaign. And the former president blasts the judge and gag order.
Unconstitutional gag order by a highly conflicted judge.
President Biden.
We have the worst president in the history of our country.
And the courtroom.
It's freezing, by the way.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening and thank you for being with us. I'm Maurice Dubois. Nora is on assignment. We begin tonight with day 2 of testimony in the criminal trial of former President Donald Trump. Former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker was back on the stand where he said he worked with Trump and his longtime fixer Michael Cohen to hide negative stories about him during the 2016 campaign. The prosecution claims it was all a part of a conspiracy to influence the election. Before today's testimony, there was a tense hearing over whether Trump repeatedly violated a gag order by attacking witnesses and jurors on social media. Prosecutors urged the judge to fine Trump thousands of dollars and hold him in contempt, while the former president complained that his right to free speech was being taken away. CBS's Robert Costa was inside the courthouse and starts us off tonight.
Former President Trump aired his frustration with being in court today.
It's a very unfair situation.
After listening to former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker, a man he's known for over 3 decades, explain the strategy he testified they agreed upon ahead of the 2016 election. The paper would bury any negative news about Trump while promoting fake stories about his political opponents, including Senators Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. Pecker testified the plan was concocted at Trump Tower in 2015. Trump and former fixer Michael Cohen allegedly asked him how he could help the campaign. He told them, "I would be your eyes and ears," explaining the practice of catch and kill. The Enquirer would buy the rights to any damaging story about Trump and never publish it. Prosecutors say that plan was the origin of Cohen's $130,000 payment to former adult film star Stormy Daniels to keep her quiet about an alleged sexual encounter with Trump, who denies it all. One example of catch and kill discussed in court today involved the Trump building doorman, who was selling what turned out to be a fake story about Trump fathering a son. Pecker told the jury today he bought the story because of the potential embarrassment it would have to the campaign and Mr. Trump.
David Pecker is a very strong witness for the prosecution. He seems very solid on the stand. He certainly seems like he doesn't have any axe to grind with Donald Trump and seems almost apologetic for having to tell the story.
On the stand, Pecker said Trump called him about another story he wanted kept quiet, that of former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who claimed to have had a 10-month-long affair with Trump in 2006, which he denies.
After we had been intimate, he tried to pay me, and I actually didn't know how to take that.
4 days before the 2016 election, the Wall Street Journal reported that American media, which owned the Enquirer at the time, had paid McDougal $150,000 for the rights to her story, which was never published. In the gag order hearing, the prosecution argued that Trump should be held in contempt for all of his scathing commentary about this case. Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, said his client's being careful with his words. To that, the judge said, that's just not credible. Maurice?
Robert Costa once again at the criminal courthouse in Lower Manhattan tonight. Thank you. Now to those escalating clashes and threats of violence on college campuses. Protests are growing as more students across the country are staging demonstrations against Israel's war in Gaza. CBS's Nancy Chen tonight on what protesters are demanding.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrators clashed with police at Cal Poly Humboldt in Northern California after a group of students used chairs and other furniture to barricade themselves inside one of the school's main buildings. At NYU, NYPD officers in riot gear cleared out a pro-Palestinian encampment last night after students defied the university's order to leave.
We want to see an acknowledgement from our university that there is a genocide happening.
Leave the class now, or you'll be arrested for trespass.
120 people were arrested.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
If you're going to host a protest, you should host it in a spot that's not so busy and dependent upon students' classes.
Today, New York City Mayor Eric Adams said students who protest peacefully are not the problem.
We can't have outside agitators come in and be destructive to our city. There was someone wanted something to happen at that protest at NYU that police officers didn't respond to.
From coast to coast, campus to campus, protests are growing louder in solidarity. Students are also joining in at UC Berkeley.
Quite frankly, I think it's important that people start to align themselves with Palestinian resistance.
Here at Columbia University, the 7th day of protests, demonstrators want the school to divest from all business that supports Israel.
I think that it's time to divest from those weapons manufacturing and redivest them into other important things.
They're also demanding amnesty for all students who have been punished.
Is the goal to stay here until those demands are met?
Yes.
And as you can see behind me, demonstrators both on and off campus are still demanding to be heard. Meanwhile, they're going calls for the university's president to resign. Maurice?
And no real end in sight tonight. Nancy Chen at Columbia University in New York, thank you. It is being called a monumental settlement for the survivors of sexual abuse by the disgraced former U.S. gymnastics Dr. Larry Nassar. The Justice Department announcing today that it'll pay more than $138 million for the FBI's mishandling of the investigation. Olympic stars Simone Biles, Michaela Maroney, and Allie Raceman among the more than 100 people who sued the FBI for failing to respond to their complaints with urgency. The combined payouts to Nassar's victims now top $1 billion. At a campaign event today in Florida, President Biden blamed his opponent, former President Trump, for a growing wave of restrictive abortion laws across the country. CBS's Nancy Cordes has warned what is shaping up to be a key issue in the polls in November.
This isn't about states' rights, it's about women's rights.
President Biden traveled to Tampa today, just 8 days before Florida's abortion crackdown is set to go into effect. The nation's third most populous state will ban abortions at 6 weeks, a point at which many women still don't realize they're pregnant.
There's one person responsible for this nightmare, and he's acknowledged and he brags about it, Donald Trump.
When it comes to abortion, there is one thing Biden and Trump agree on, that it was Trump's appointment of 3 deeply conservative Supreme Court justices that changed the balance of the court and brought about an end to Roe v. Wade.
We broke Roe v. Wade, and we did something that nobody thought was possible.
Since then, about half of all U.S. states have rolled back reproductive rights, and yet polling by CBS News shows only a third of Americans say Trump deserves the blame.
He described the Dobbs decision as a miracle. Maybe it's coming from that Bible he's trying to sell.
Today, Biden highlighted the recent spike in pregnant women being turned away from emergency rooms. Caitlin Joshua was turned away by 2 hospitals in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, when she was having a miscarriage.
I was told that I would be sent home with prayers but would not get a diagnosis of miscarriage on paper or verbally.
5 months after Florida's abortion ban goes into effect, voters in that state will have a chance to reverse it. There's a referendum on November's ballot in Florida that the Biden team hopes will drive Democratic voters to the polls there, though Florida hasn't gone for a Democratic presidential candidate since 2012. Maurice?
Okay, Nancy Cordes at the White House tonight, thank you. Now a story that should serve as a warning for gun owners traveling to the Caribbean islands of Turks and Caicos. An American tourist is behind bars tonight, facing up to 12 years in prison after officials found ammunition in his luggage. CBS's Chris Van Cleve reports on a State Department travel alerts.
A tearful reunion at the Oklahoma City airport this morning was not the way Valerie Watson thought her Turks and Caicos vacation would end.
Just getting to hold them again. It just filled my mama heart.
She's home, but her husband and father of 2, Ryan, is in jail on the islands, facing a potential mandatory minimum sentence of 12 years behind bars over 4 rounds of hunting ammo airport security found in his carry-on bag as the couple was set to leave Turks and Caicos earlier this month.
We were trying to pack board shorts and flip-flops. You know, packing ammunition was not at all our intent.
We spoke with the Watsons Sunday before they learned Valerie would not be charged and be allowed to return home.
This went from what was supposed to be a dream vacation to a nightmare.
Brian Hegridge from Pennsylvania is awaiting trial after ammo was found in his checked bag in February.
Subsequently spent 8 nights in their local jail, some of the darkest, hardest times of my life, quite frankly.
Possessing a gun or ammunition is prohibited in Turks and Caicos. However, tourists were often able to pay a fine until a February court order mandating even tourists in the process of leaving the country be subject to prison time. Last September, the U.S. Embassy posted this travel alert online, warning people to check your luggage for stray ammunition.
I can't even begin to think that this very innocent, regrettable mistake would prevent me from being able to, watch my son graduate or teach him to shave or take my daughter to, dances.
A mistake that could land American tourists visiting an island paradise in a prison hell. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News.
Now to breaking news tonight, CBS News is confirming that the FDA has found evidence of the bird flu virus in grocery store milk, but expressed confidence that there is no threat to human health. The government agency said tests are being conducted to determine how well pasteurization works to reduce the risk of infectious bird flu in the milk supply. Tonight, we continue our CBS News investigation into the growing wave of online romance scams. CBS's Jim Axelrod reports on a sinister new twist when the victims themselves become accomplices.
My mom was actually very specific about wanting to do online dating, and it felt safer.
Online dating felt safer.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't painful enough that Kelly Gow's mother, Laura Kowal, was scammed out of $1.5 million, then found dead in the Mississippi River, when Kelly started investigating what happened, she discovered her mom's role in something criminal.
She got so deep into the scam, and when she tried getting out of it, she became what is known in these scams as a money mule. They got her hooked into it.
Laura wasn't alone.
My name is Glenda.
It's the latest scammer tactic, now so widespread that federal agents have broadcast warnings.
Police officers told me that my love was a scam.
This feels like it moves to a whole other level of sinister.
They use victims till the end.
Retired Postal Inspector Natalie Rita investigated cases where victims fell so hard for their scammers, they'd do anything they were told, like depositing other victims' money in their accounts to launder it and stay one step ahead of the authorities. At first, the victims might not have realized they were committing a crime.
They check their reasoning at the door.
Kelly says her mom opened bank accounts, created fake corporations, and even set up phony dating profiles for the scammers.
Could your mom have been compromised and actually been working for these guys?
I believe so.
At the time of her death, police said Kelly's mom, Laura, was actually under investigation for money laundering. Federal agents had traced some of the money Laura unwittingly sent to scammers to Chicago and arrested this woman, Jennifer Gosha, along with 2 Nigerian nationals for alleged involvement in romance fraud. While prosecutors say Gosha was an active participant, she has pleaded not guilty and told us she too was a money mule, duped by one of the Nigerians, and says she never made a nickel.
It wasn't like a ding, 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 something's wrong.
Gosha says she dated one of the Nigerians in real life, but he operated behind her back.
I served in the Iraqi war. I raised my children. I am not someone who decides, after all I've accomplished in my life, now I'm going to become a criminal mastermind. If I'm going to come up with a scheme, it's not going to be this dumbass scheme.
If convicted, Gosha could face up to 30 years in prison.
Do you ever think to yourself, I played a part in someone's life being ruined?
I have thought that many, many times. And I didn't play a part in it knowingly.
You're saying you're a victim of the scammers as well?
I'm absolutely a victim.
And you're a victim who may end up doing time?
And only because they feel like I should have known.
As for Kelly Gao, her thought is simple. Someone has to pay.
And I have so much anger towards them. They took everything away from her. And my family will never get that time back.
Wow. Eye-opening, disturbing. Jim, where does your investigation go now?
Well, Maurice, law enforcement tells us that the explosion of romance scams is tied directly to the increased popularity of online dating apps. They are, after all, a target-rich environment for scammers. So tomorrow, we'll dive much more deeply into that on CBS Mornings.
That's must-see. Jim, thank you. Officials overseas investigating a mid-air crash between 2 helicopters. We'll have the details next. The details next. There were no survivors today when 2 helicopters collided in midair during a rehearsal for a military parade in Malaysia. One helicopter clipped the other's rotor, sending both crashing to the ground and killing all 10 crew members on board. The accident prompted Malaysia's government to cancel Saturday's 90th anniversary celebration for its Navy. The future of the popular security screening company Clear appears to be murky in the state of California. We'll explain why next.
If you can't watch the CBS Evening News, you can listen. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Tonight, the popular security screening service Clear is facing some possible turbulence in California. The company could be banned from the state's airports after lawmakers say it's created a system of haves and have-nots when it comes to skipping the long lines. Here's CBS's Carter Evans.
In long airport security lines, one thing is perfectly clear. Those who pay extra get rewarded.
What the current system does is it allows a clear customer to cut the line.
California State Senator Josh Newman introduced the first-in-the-nation law that would stop customers who pay the $189 annual fee from leapfrogging the security line at the state's airports.
All Clear really does is it moves me in front of you, and we get to the same place in front of the conveyor belt. Only by then you're mad, the TSA agent's all stressed out, and I paid $189 because I think I'm better than you.
How is this different than any other service that we pay to jump the line?
People pay to jump the line at theme parks. They pay to jump the line going into music concerts, sports stadiums.
The company says it has nearly 1 million California customers and pays airports there $13 million. Several airlines have taken a stake in Clear and say the lost revenue could mean higher fares. But Clear, which uses fingerprinting and eye scanning in its screenings, has had issues in recent years with security lapses. That's the main reason the union representing flight attendants supports the bill. And lawmakers don't want to ban Clear entirely, just separate the lines.
If you pay for Clear, go do your line somewhere else.
That's financially and logistically impractical. TSA doesn't have the funding it needs now to adequately staff all of the security lanes that exist.
And Clear is also facing another business challenge. The TSA and airlines are already investing in similar technology at checkpoints around the country, including right here at LAX. The goal is to move everyone through security faster, whether you've got Clear or not. Maurice?
Okay, Carter, we'll keep an eye on that one. Carter Evans in Los Angeles tonight. Thank you. Heart of America is next with a NASA accomplishment that is truly out of this world.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Aleve, 12 hours of uninterrupted pain relief.
Finally here, tonight's Heart of America, and we meet the NASA scientists who repaired a spacecraft from 15 billion miles away. The Voyager 1 is known for being the first spacecraft to go beyond our solar system, so when it stopped sending data back to Earth last November, the team faced a daunting task. They traced the problem to a single malfunctioning computer chip and announced yesterday that they finally made contact again. Suzanne Dodd, the Voyager project manager, said this was all about teamwork.
It's just incredible to be a part of this mission that continues to this day. and that has inspired so many generations of people to go into space exploration or science.
Suzanne Dodd and the Voyager 1 team at NASA, tonight's Heart of America, all about teamwork. And that is tonight's CBS Evening News. For Nora O'Donnell, I'm Maurice Dubois. Thanks so much for joining us here. Have a good night.
Tonight, pro-Palestinian protests taking over college campuses from coast to coast. Unrest erupts.
The Biden administration was reportedly blindsided by the scale of Iran's attack against Israel. The Wall Street Journal details the behind-the-scenes situation room meeting on April 13th as 30 missiles quickly and suddenly became 300. Fox News strategic analyst, retired General Jack Keane, is with us now. Just set this up with a senior Biden administration official saying the scale of Tehran's first ever direct attack on Israel matched U.S. spy agencies' worst-case scenarios. This was on the high end, I think, of what we were anticipating, he said. What do you have to give us that can help us understand that whole scenario and what they're trying to say behind the scenes?
Yeah, well, I think certainly what Iran did that night surprised everybody in terms of the scale of it. You know, for our audience to recall, Iran has never conducted a direct attack against Israel, has always chosen to use its proxies. And secondly, despite Israelis killing nuclear scientists, other military officials in Iran, blowing up a portion of the Natanz uranium enrichment nuclear site, conducting airstrikes at the Damascus International Airport against Iran's weapons warehouse. Despite all of these things and no reaction from Iran, certainly after a number of days, it became obvious that Iran had made a decision they were going to conduct an attack themselves. But even though everyone had that intelligence, no one anticipated the scale of this attack that would exceed, 300 plus missiles and drones. And what the Iranians really did, they took a page out of the Russian playbook here, because the Russians evolved to this point where they mixed lots of drones with cruise missiles, standoff from the country itself, using largely aircraft to do that, and then ballistic missiles at scale. Certainly not at the scale that the Iranians did, but they were using that Russian playbook, which has been working inside of Ukraine. But fundamentally, when they saw the 30 missiles, then 60 missiles, they still did not anticipate, Dana, that there would be 120 ballistic missiles. And certainly that grabbed everybody. And they obviously were likely saying some prayers that the defense system would work. And you've got to credit what the IDF multi-layered system did, and certainly what the United States warfighting headquarters in the region did to organize a multinational defense against this, which was so successful.
And speaking of the IDF, there was news also over the weekend that the intel chief has resigned because of intelligence failures that didn't warn the country about October 7th when they were attacked on that terrible day. This is accountability, leadership?
Yeah, most definitely. He offered his resignation almost immediately within the first few days of that, but they asked him to stay on because they knew it would be so disruptive given they had their hands full in going to war in Gaza. So he's waited to the 6 months and now walked away. And he has assumed full responsibility for his role in this, but there will be others held accountable here. I mean, there were reports out, much like we found out concerning 9/11, that the Israelis had some idea that there was going to be a comprehensive attack against them as much as a year out, but they discounted it because they didn't think it was in, quote, Hamas's capability. The Egyptians gave him a heads up that something big was coming, and we'll have to get the autopsy and the details to find out what distracted them, what did they really miss. Was the violence in the West Bank that was taking place a distraction? Was the political distraction of the dispute over the reform of the Supreme Court, where hundreds of thousands of people were in the streets demonstrating? And also, what did they miss in terms of the training and preparation? I mean, they've got huge technological oversight of what is taking place. To miss all of that is really quite stunning. So it'll be, at the end of the day, it's going to be some report. And I think our viewers understand that while the majority of Israelis are supporting the war in Gaza and the aims that President Netanyahu and his war cabinet have established, the majority of the people in Israel also, when the war is over, are expecting Prime Minister Netanyahu to resign, and if he runs for re-election, would likely not be elected because they are already holding him accountable to what took place on October the 7th.
Yep, and that autopsy, as you say, is underway, and it will be a stunner, and we'll learn a lot from it. General Jack Keane, thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Civil defense workers in Gaza have now recovered at least 310 bodies buried in a mass grave at the Nasser Medical Complex in the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis. Earlier today, UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk said he was horrified by the mass grave, which was found 2 weeks after Israeli forces ended their siege on the hospital. Some of the bodies found had their hands tied behind their backs. Today marks 200 days since Israel launched its assault on Gaza. On Monday, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Health, Tlaleng Mofokeng, warned the impact of the Israeli war will be felt for generations.
Mental health, intergenerational trauma, the kinds of acute assistance, medical debriefing, psychological debriefing that many children still have not received is of serious concern. And often, of course, we see the physical injury, and because it's physical, one can appreciate the severity of it. But the acute mental distress that will then turn into anxiety and other kinds of mental illnesses later on in life is really, really important to start thinking intentionally about.
An independent UN commission says Israel's offered no evidence to back up its allegations that employees of the UN aid agency UNRWA participated in the October 7th attacks by Hamas. Allegations by Israel led many countries to temporarily cut off funding just as the humanitarian crisis was intensifying in Gaza. U.S. lawmakers have banned UNRWA funding for the next year. Palestinian solidarity protests and encampments are spreading across college campuses around the country, inspired by the Gaza Solidarity Encampment at Columbia University. Here in New York, police raided a student encampment at New York University Monday night. Police arrested more than 150 people, including students and faculty. Earlier on Monday, police at Yale University arrested 60 protesters, including 47 students who'd set up a campus encampment to demand the school divest from weapons manufacturers. At Columbia University, the student encampment has entered its 7th day. On Monday night, about 100 student protesters and faculty took part in a Gaza Liberation Seder to mark the start of the Jewish holiday of Passover. Student encampments are now in place at numerous other schools, including the University of Michigan Ann Arbor, the University of California, Berkeley, the University of Maryland, MIT, and Emerson College in Boston. Yasser Munif is an Emerson professor.
I want Emerson to listen to the students, hear them, understand their perspective. Also open a space for a discussion of Palestine, the discussion of the genocide in Palestine, in Gaza, and allow the student to express themselves. Freedom of speech, academic freedom.
In more protest news, PEN America's canceled its award ceremony after roughly half of this year's nominees withdrew from literary prizes to protest what they called PEN's complicity in normalizing genocide, unquote. The estate of Jean Stein, which awards a $75,000 prize each year, requested the money be directed instead to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. Her children are Katrina and Wendy Vanden Heuvel. Google has fired another 20 workers in retaliation for last week's protest against Project Nimbus, Google's cloud computing contract with Israel. The firings reportedly included workers who were simply bystanders during the sit-in. In a Manhattan courtroom, both the prosecution and defense delivered opening statements Monday in Donald Trump's criminal hush money case, the first of 4 criminal cases Trump is facing. Prosecutors said Trump's $130,000 payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels in 2016 and his effort to cover it up by falsifying business records constituted, quote, election fraud, pure and simple, unquote. Meanwhile, Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, argued the former president did not do anything illegal, saying, quote, there's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election, unquote. The court heard briefly from the prosecution's first witness, David Pecker, former publisher of the National Enquirer. He's taking the stand again today. The court will also consider arguments from prosecutors that Trump has repeatedly violated his gag order. Meanwhile, Trump's valet, Walt Nauta, a co-defendant in Trump's classified documents case, was reportedly told he would be pardoned if he lied to the FBI and Trump was reelected as president. The conservative-ruled U.S. Supreme Court appeared to side with an Oregon city's crackdown on unhoused people in a key case that could have devastating implications nationwide. The case centers around the small city of Grants Pass, Oregon, which has banned people from sleeping with a blanket or pillow on any public land despite not having public shelters. Those who violate the ban can face hundreds of dollars in fines. Liberal Justice Elena Kagan highlighted the absurdity of the city's ban.
Sleeping is a biological necessity. It's sort of like breathing. I mean, you could say breathing is conduct too, but presumably you would not think that it's okay to criminalize breathing in public.
Fellow liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor also challenged the Grants Pass attorney, arguing the city does not arrest babies or stargazers who bring blankets to public parks.
Where do we put them if every city, every village, every town lacks compassion and passes a law identical to this? Where are they supposed to sleep? Are they supposed to kill themselves not sleeping?
Outside the Supreme Court, hundreds of housing justice advocates gathered to demonstrate. Among those addressing the crowd was Bishop William Barber of the Poor People's Campaign.
Laws that make it a crime to be poor are unjust. Laws that would penalize homeless folk for sleeping in public parks is unjust, excessive, and cruel and unusual punishment, and it has no place in America.
The United Kingdom's highly contested plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda is set to become law after it was passed by the House of Lords Monday. Despite ongoing questions over its lawfulness, Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak vowed to begin the deportation flights in 10 to 12 weeks.
But we are ready. Plans are in place. And these flights will go, come what may. No foreign court will stop us from getting flights off.
The plan was agreed to by Rwanda and the UK 2 years ago, but has faced intense criticism from rights groups. Monday's bill overrides a UK Supreme Court ruling from last year, which found the policy unconstitutional. UN human rights experts have asked the UK to reconsider the plan and warned aviation authorities against participating in the deportation flights, citing a possible violation of international human rights laws. In related news, just hours ago, local authorities say at least 5 people, including a 7-year-old girl, died as they attempted to cross the English Channel from France in an overcrowded boat. Rescue operations are still underway. In Mexico, 2 mayoral candidates were killed Friday, Noé Ramos Fertiz in Tamaulipas state and Alberto Garcia in Oaxaca. 17 candidates have been murdered in the run-up to the June 2nd election in Mexico, where drug cartels often target mayors as they seek to control local police department and municipal authorities. The Biden administration Monday issued a new rule protecting the privacy of patients seeking reproductive health care. The rule, which bars the disclosure of patients' medical records, applies even when someone travels out of state for an abortion or IVF or other reproductive health care. President Biden announced a $7 billion investment in solar energy Monday, which was Earth Day. The money, which comes from the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, will fund dozens of solar projects around the country and create an estimated 200,000 jobs. Biden made the announcement in Virginia's Prince William Forest Park, flanked by Senators Bernie Sanders and Ed Markey and Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
We'll put tens of thousands of young people to work at the forefront of our climate resilience and energy future, clean energy future. Today, I'm proud to announce that Americans across the country can now apply to become the first members of the American Climate Corps. We're recruiting for over 2,000 positions in 36 states to start with in Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, with many on the way.
Environmental activists from around the world are gathered in New York this week, where they held a first-of-its-kind Earth Day hearing on Citigroup's environmental racism Monday. Citibank is the world's second largest funder of coal, oil, and gas. Rashada Azan is a black environmental leader from Sulphur, Louisiana, who's been leading the fight against the Citibank-funded LNG build-out in her community.
We are calling for Citibank to commit to end funding and financing services for new and expanding liquefied methane gas projects and their parent companies, including all projects that have already been built and those that have not been built, or those that have not reached a final investment decision. This is a critical time for Citi to assess climate, community, and human rights impacts of the methane gas sector.
Students from Columbia, Tulane, and the University of Virginia filed complaints with their state's attorneys general, arguing their universities' fossil fuel investments are illegal and counter to their missions. The students cite a law which requires nonprofit institutions to prioritize charitable purposes when they invest. They also highlight the hypocrisy of the colleges conducting climate research while hoping to financially fuel the crisis. And in South Korea, a court heard from youth climate activists and their families who accuse the government of failing to meaningfully act on climate change. It's believed to be the first such case in Asia. Similar cases have been filed in Europe and the U.S. This is the mother of two children plaintiff.
Carbon emission reduction keeps getting pushed back, as if it is a homework that can be done later. But that burden will be what our children have to bear eventually.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.
Tonight, the first witness back on the stand in Donald Trump's hush money trial as the judge considers whether the former president violated his gag order. Mr. Trump's longtime friend, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, testifying about a secret scheme to catch and kill stories to help Mr. Trump's 2016 campaign, including a doorman's claim he fathered a child out of wedlock. And the moment the judge warned his attorney was, quote, losing all credibility. Also tonight, college campuses on edge as pro-Palestinian protests spread across the country, from California to Minnesota to New York, where police arrested 120 protesters at NYU overnight. Columbia going hybrid the rest of the semester. The new developments tonight. After victims of former USA Gymnastics Dr. Larry Nassar accused the FBI of botching the investigation, the major new settlement tonight. The Senate advancing a $95 billion foreign aid package that could also potentially ban TikTok. My exclusive interview with FBI Director Christopher Wray on that TikTok firestorm, the unprecedented threat level in the U.S., and Donald Trump calling the January 6 defendants hostages. You see those individuals who took part in the January 6 riots as hostages. How he answered, and the miracle baby born out of tragedy in Gaza.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. The jury in the Donald Trump hush money trial was introduced to the soft underbelly of the supermarket tabloid business today. Their guide, prosecution witness David Pecker, former National Enquirer publisher. Pecker describing made-up stories published to damage Trump opponents. He testified about a payment to a New York doorman for a salacious but untrue story about Mr. Trump, and described a key meeting in which he says he pledged to be Donald Trump's eyes and ears, ready to alert to negative stories that could appear about him during the 2016 presidential campaign. The prosecution hoping to prove it all leads to paying off a porn star and an illegal scheme to disguise the transaction through altered business records. Once again tonight, here's Laura Jarrett.
Tonight, Mr. Trump's longtime friend David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, offering the jury a rare glimpse into the underworld of tabloid tactics as the state seeks to prove the former president doctored his internal business records to cover up the payoff of an adult film actress just days before the 2016 election.
Mr. Trump, what do you think of David Pecker?
Pecker describing a meeting at Trump Tower in 2015 with Mr. Trump and his former fixer Michael Cohen, where Pecker says he agreed to serve as the eyes and ears for rumors that could hurt Mr. Trump, adding, "What I would do is publish positive stories about Trump and publish negative stories about his opponents." The prosecution then showing the jury a series of glowing headlines about then-candidate Trump and derogatory ones making baseless claims about Mr. Trump's Republican opponents, including Ted Cruz. Pecker admitting today the Enquirer made up a story linking Cruz's father to the man who assassinated JFK. Pecker also testifying his company paid a doorman $30,000 for a completely untrue story about Mr. Trump fathering a child with his housekeeper, so the doorman couldn't take the story elsewhere, trying to save Mr. Trump and the campaign the potential embarrassment. The day began with the judge taking the defense team to task over Mr. Trump's posts on social media, targeting Cohen and Stormy Daniels. The state seeking to hold Mr. Trump in criminal contempt for violating the judge's gag order that bars him from attacking trial witnesses.
So they can talk about me, they can say whatever they want, they can lie, but I'm not allowed to say anything. I love to say everything that's on my mind.
In court, the defense arguing Mr. Trump should be permitted to respond to political attacks, and the gag order should not cover reposts of someone else. The judge didn't rule today, but seemed exasperated, telling lead defense attorney Todd Blanche, "You are losing all credibility with the court." Minutes later, during a break, Mr. Trump back on Truth Social, falsely writing the judge had taken away his right to free speech. This is a kangaroo court.
Coke Studio, Season 15.
This is a kangaroo court.
And Laura, you were in the courtroom today. What were some of your impressions?
Well, Lester, this jury is engaged. They're paying attention. They're looking at the exhibits on the screen in front of them. They're listening carefully to the witness, David Pecker. Some of them I even saw taking notes, and they will hear more from Pecker when he testifies again on Thursday. Lester?
All right, Laura Jarrett tonight. Thank you. Tonight's other top story, the growing number of pro-Palestinian demonstrations and people being arrested on America's college campuses from coast to coast. And there's concerns over anti-Semitic rhetoric. Erin McLaughlin now with late developments for us.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Clashes and arrests from the streets of New York to the University of Minnesota to Cal Poly Humboldt. As more universities crack down on pro-Palestinian protests, citing safety concerns and anti-Semitic rhetoric. Pro-Palestinian encampments now across more than a dozen campuses, as students call for universities to divest from companies connected to Israel.
We're paying a lot of tuition to be here. We want to know where our money is going. We want to know where the investments are going as students.
Overnight at New York University, police say 120 protesters were taken away in zip ties. 116 were released with summons for trespass, including Assistant Professor Zach Samelin.
Did you have the opportunity to leave?
I did have the opportunity to leave, yes, but what I did instead was I linked arms with my colleagues on the faculty of New York University in order to protect our students from the police.
The university said many of the protesters were not affiliated with the school and that they'd witnessed disorderly, disruptive, and antagonizing behavior, pointing to intimidating chants and several anti-Semitic incidents reported. The days of protests following congressional testimony from Columbia's president, creating a new flashpoint between free speech and hate speech.
Why do you believe they stopped this protest?
NYU has been engaged in a campaign of repressing pro-Palestinian speech for 7 months. That is, I'm unequivocal about that.
Students insisting the protest was peaceful. Today, with the NYU Business School barricaded, students gathered in nearby Washington Square Park.
It's really frustrating because they say they're for free speech and they say they're for academic freedom.
At nearby Columbia University, classes are being offered online the rest of the year. The pro-Palestinian encampment still standing following last week's mass arrests.
It's not safe.
Associate Professor Hagar Shamali says the university needs to do more for Jewish students to feel safe.
It shouldn't be that we have to shut down classes and go virtual and force us to stay home and encourage Jewish students to stay home because the protesters have created an unsafe environment. It should be the other way around.
Meanwhile, U.S. House Republicans demanding Columbia's president resign immediately for failing to crack down.
And Erin joining us now live from New York where demonstrations are taking place. Erin, the House Speaker will visit nearby Columbia University tomorrow.
That's right, Lester. According to his office, House Speaker Mike Johnson will meet with Jewish students on the Columbia University campus tomorrow. He's expected to hold a press conference after. Lester?
Erin McLaughlin in New York, thank you. Today, the Justice Department formally announced it will pay almost $139 million to settle claims by 139 prominent athletes and other women abused by Larry Nassar, the former USA Gymnastics team doctor. The claims allege the FBI failed to conduct an adequate investigation of Nassar. He is serving a 60-year federal prison sentence. The Senate tonight is nearing a vote that could eventually lead to the banning of TikTok over national security concerns. Savannah Sellers joins me from Capitol Hill. Savannah, what's the latest?
Lester, senators are poised to continue debating late into the night before they vote on billions in aid dollars for Ukraine's military, the Israeli war effort, and Taiwan. But wrapped up in that package, the future of TikTok in the U.S., something more than 150 million Americans who use the app are paying close attention to.
TikTok is a major foreign threat. The bill we are passing today puts an end to that.
Tonight, the Senate debating the future of TikTok, ahead of a vote that could effectively ban the wildly popular app in the U.S.
Foreign adversaries use technology for social and political control.
Many Americans, particularly young Americans, are rightfully skeptical. At the end of the day, they've not seen what Congress has seen. They've not been in the classified briefings that Congress has held.
While TikTokers just outside make an urgent plea at the Capitol.
Every bit of my livelihood is tethered to TikTok.
Our elected officials are on TikTok. We believe if it were dangerous, they shouldn't be there, but they keep trying to reach us there when it's convenient. This vote, the last step before the legislation would head to President Biden's desk. He's indicated he'll sign it, triggering a countdown. The app's Chinese parent company would have at least 9 months to sell the platform. If they don't, it would be removed from the App Store. It wouldn't disappear from phones, but no new downloads or updates would be possible. But that's likely years away, if at all, because of TikTok's promised legal challenge to the potential law. Writing in an internal memo, we will move to the courts, and arguing the ban would impede on the free speech of users.
Say TikTok!
But some senators say TikTok's ownership by Chinese parent company ByteDance raises serious security and data concerns.
Through this process, have you learned anything about Americans' data on TikTok that does really concern you? Anything concrete?
Yes, rivers of data are being collected and shared in ways that are not well aligned with American security.
TikTok, the closest it's been to time running out. Savannah Sellers, NBC News, Washington.
While Donald Trump was in court today, President Biden was campaigning on abortion rights in his rival's home state. The president in Florida slamming the state's upcoming 6-week abortion ban and saying Mr. Trump is the, quote, one person responsible. Mr. Trump, who takes credit for the fall of Roe v. Wade, recently said he believes abortion rights should be left up to the states. In 60 seconds, the FDA finding bird flu traces in the milk supply, what we are learning. Plus, intense protests in the Tennessee Capitol after lawmakers approved letting teachers arm themselves in classrooms. What it means for schools and kids.
The FDA said today it has found fragments of the bird flu virus in some samples of pasteurized milk in the United States. This comes less than a month after an outbreak of bird flu was found in dairy cows in several states. The FDA says the commercial milk supply is safe, that pasteurization is likely to inactivate the virus, but that testing is still going on. Now to the dramatic day at the Tennessee State Capitol. More than a year after the deadly mass shooting in a Nashville school, lawmakers passing a bill today that would let teachers be armed. Here's Priya Sridhar.
Chaos erupting in Tennessee State Capitol, where lawmakers just passed a bill that would allow teachers to carry concealed handguns in schools.
This is the reaction of rage, hurt, and anger.
Emotions were high as protesters descended on the House gallery, waving signs as House representatives voted 68-28 to pass the bill, following the state Senate's lead. It's one of the biggest pro-gun moves by the state since the tragic shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville last year that killed 6.
We are being blamed for putting guns in schools, but the purpose of it is to protect our children.
32 other states passed legislation allowing teachers to carry guns in schools, as states across the country grapple with how to address school violence. If signed by the governor, the Tennessee law would allow teachers to carry guns in schools where top administrators agree. The teachers would be required to have a permit, do training, and get a background check and mental health evaluation.
Currently, it's just one of those gun-free zones where people know they can go there and take advantage of folks.
The bill now heads to Governor Bill Lee's desk, who is expected to sign it soon.
Every person that dies at the hand of a gun in this state, it's on their hands.
Tennessee becoming the next state to arm educators in America. Priya Sridhar, NBC News.
And up next for us here tonight, my exclusive interview with FBI Director Christopher Wray. His message on TikTok, student protests, and America after January 6th. We're back now with my exclusive interview today with FBI Director Christopher Wray. We spoke about the multiple national security threats the country faces, the impact of the Israel-Hamas war, and January 6th. Have you ever seen a threat environment quite like the one we're experiencing?
As I look back over my career in law enforcement, I'm hard-pressed to come up with a time where I've seen so many different threats all elevated all at the same time, whether it's the threats from China, Russia, Iran, the terrorism threats, both foreign terrorist threats and domestic terrorist threats.
Among his pressing worries, says the FBI director, is the spillover from the Israel-Hamas conflict.
So we thought that even before October 7th, if you and I were having this conversation, then we would have said that the terrorism threat was already elevated. But post-October 7th, it's gone to a whole nother level.
There's an environment right now we're seeing play out on some college campuses, the protests over what's happening in Gaza. Are you watching that warily?
Well, of course, demonstrations themselves are not something that we, the FBI, get involved in. But when violence ensues, that's when we get concerned. We have threats of violence. And so we have seen, even before October 7th, we saw a significant increase, especially in anti-Semitic threats and anti-Semitic violence.
Are you actively monitoring these protests?
We don't monitor protests, but we do share intelligence about specific threats of violence.
Congress is on the verge of passing legislation that would essentially ban TikTok if it's not sold. You've talked about this, many in the government have talked about the threat of TikTok. Can you be specific about what your fear is?
TikTok, for us, represents a national security concern. And the reason I say that is that TikTok's parent company is beholden to the Chinese government. So that, for us, manifests itself in 3 specific ways. It has to do with the data, it has to do with the recommendation algorithm, it has to deal with the software. The data, we're talking about the ability to control or collect data on millions and millions of users and to use it for all sorts of influence operations like driving their AI efforts, which are not remotely constrained by the rule of law.
Are they doing that now, or that's simply that they have the capability to do that?
What I would say to you is that they are currently attempting to steal our AI and hack American technology every day.
What do you say to the millions of Americans who have likely heard what you and others had to say, but they've rejected it? They don't care. They like TikTok. They like making money on TikTok. What would your message be to them?
My message is you need to take into account who the Chinese government is, who the Chinese Communist Party is. Even if for some reason you don't care about that, which I would argue you should, what about all of your friends, family members, classmates, coworkers, neighbors, etc., who are also participating and are connected to you through all those same things? Maybe they would care about the ability of the Chinese government, the Chinese intelligence services to access all that.
Let me ask you about January 6th. Are you still pursuing January 6 cases?
We have any number of January 6 cases underway.
Former President Trump has referred to those who have been in prison or are facing trial as hostages. Do you see those individuals who took part in the January 6 riots as hostages?
I see the defendants in the January 6 cases as criminal defendants who are being charged with federal crimes and are in front of independent courts as part of our legal system.
Former President Trump has said that if he's reelected, he would use the FBI and the DOJ to go after his political opponents. Would you be party to that?
I'm going to make sure that as long as I'm FBI director, we do the right thing in the right way. And that means following the law, following our rules, staying faithful to our core values, enforcing the law without fear or favor.
If Donald Trump is reelected, will you plan on continuing to serve?
I'm enjoying doing this job. As long as I think I can continue doing that in a way that adheres to all those rules and norms, it's like what I'd like to keep doing.
Aside from national security threats and crime fighting, Wray says he wants Americans to know the FBI is also focused on standing up for victims.
We have something like 250 people, an entire division that's just focused on victim services. And while that might not be the first thing that Americans think of when they think of the FBI, I can tell you it's the first thing that victims think of when they engage with the FBI.
Part of my conversation with FBI Director Christopher Wray today. We'll take you inside Gaza next for a remarkable story of one newborn's hope in the midst of so much heartbreak. Stay with us. Finally tonight, the tiny miracle born out of tragedy in the war in Gaza. We get the story from Raf Sanchez.
It's a scene now grimly familiar in the aftermath of an Israeli strike. Rafah's Kuwait hospital flooded with the wounded. Until something extraordinary. A baby girl delivered by emergency C-section from the womb of her dying mother. The first moments of her life, a desperate race to the ICU. She's 2 months premature, and she isn't breathing. This doctor trying to coax air into her tiny lungs. It's only after an oxygen mask is fitted that she cries out for the very first time. But she needs care they can't give her here. Our crew follows on a dangerous journey through the darkness to the Emirati hospital, where a neonatal ward is at least partially functioning. Her weight recorded at just over 3 pounds. The little girl was born an orphan. Her mother Sabrine, father Shukri, and 3-year-old sister Malak all killed in the Israeli strike. Now she's in the care of her grandmother and uncle. We were there for their first glimpse of her. Little Adham lifted to see his cousin through the glass. Doctors say the early birth left the baby's lungs in severe distress, but
now she's doing much better.
Some comfort for a family deciding what to name a child who lost everything before her life even began. They chose Sabrina Roa, her mother's name, in the Arabic for soul. You are my soul, you're in my heart, she tells the child. Sabrine's defiant heartbeat, a note of hope in Gaza's chorus of grief. Raf Sanchez, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
And that is nightly news for this Tuesday. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC.
Tonight, several breaking stories. The Donald Trump trial. Major testimony today, the relationship between Donald Trump and the National Enquirer, how this all worked. Campus tests turning violent tonight, students and riot police, the images coming in, and the vintage plane that just went down, images of the crash just in tonight. First, Donald Trump's criminal trial, the former publisher of the National Enquirer on the stand, testifying about how this worked before the 2016 election, buying stories and then killing them to protect Trump. The publisher admitted today was made up. Tonight, the dramatic images coming in, student demonstrators face-to-face with police in riot gear. Chairs and bottles thrown at police during a protest at NYU. Protesters occupying buildings, clashing with riot police at Cal Poly. Officers sweeping through campuses, hundreds arrested during pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Tonight, the urgent manhunt for a former police officer suspected of killing 2 people, including his ex-wife and another victim, now believed to be on the run with his 1-year-old son. Tonight, the Justice Department agreeing to a massive settlement with victims of disgraced gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar after the FBI mishandled allegations from dozens of women. President Biden hoping to put Florida in play this November. Biden's major abortion rights speech in Florida today with that state's new 6-week abortion ban going into effect. Biden arguing this is all happening after Donald Trump's picks for the Supreme Court helped overturn Roe and a woman's right to choose. Tonight, the arrest after the harrowing video, a woman pleading for help as she was kidnapped.
Please help me!
Tonight, the video showing the suspect picking her up, carrying her away. Also, there's images just coming in, the fiery plane crash and what we've learned. And tonight here, we take you deep under the sea, the secrets of the octopus, how they survive, how they communicate, even with humans.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It's great to have you with us here on a very busy Tuesday night. We have several developing stories as we come on tonight. Campus protests now turning violent tonight. Students face-to-face with police in riot gear, and you'll see it. Also, this vintage plane that just went down tonight. The images coming in as well. But we do begin tonight with Donald Trump's criminal trial. Jurors listening intently today as the former publisher of the National Enquirer testified about the confidential arrangement made with Trump in 2015 to help his presidential campaign, publishing flattering stories about Trump and hit jobs on his opponents, agreeing to be Trump's, quote, eyes and ears for potentially damaging stories. One of them involving a former Playboy model, Karen McDougal, who claimed she had a year-long affair with Trump, a claim Trump denied. But her story was bought and never printed. ABC senior investigative correspondent Aaron Petersky at the courthouse again tonight.
Today, as Donald Trump listened intently, the former publisher of the National Enquirer for the first time laying out the extraordinary relationship between candidate Trump and the sordid supermarket tabloid, describing what he called the confidential arrangement he made with Trump and Trump's former fixer Michael Cohen to protect Trump during the 2016 campaign. David Pecker grinning widely as he pointed out Trump in the courtroom, the former president smirking back. The two men had been friends for years. But Pecker told the jury their relationship changed in 2015 after Trump launched his run for president. Pecker was summoned to Trump Tower that August, and in a 20-minute meeting he said Trump and Cohen asked me what can I do and what my magazines can do to help the campaign. Pecker testified he pledged to run flattering stories about Trump and hit jobs on his opponents, and he offered to be the campaign's eyes and ears to alert Cohen if he caught wind of any potentially damaging stories. Pecker said he told Trump he'd try to kill those stories so they'd never see the light of day. As Pecker described that Trump Tower meeting, jurors were rapt, taking constant notes. Pecker then laid out how he worked with Trump and Cohen to publish attacks on rival Republican candidates. Cohen would tell him who to go after, and the tabloid would do it. One target, Senator Ted Cruz. On the witness stand, Pecker admitted the Enquirer fabricated a story falsely linking Cruz's father Raphael with the Kennedy assassination. They even faked a photo. Pecker testifying they took a picture of Raphael Cruz and a picture of Lee Harvey Oswald and matched the two together, adding, that's how the story was prepared, created, I would say. Trump, who had planted the seed, then running with the fake story about Cruz's father.
What was he doing with Lee Harvey Oswald shortly before the death, before the shooting? It's horrible.
Pecker told the jury he was convinced women would come forward with salacious stories to sell because Trump was the most eligible bachelor and dated the most beautiful women. Trump perking up at that description and then visibly perturbed, pursing his lips and crossing his arms as Pecker started to detail one example, the story of former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who claims to have had a year-long affair with Trump, which he denies. When he learned McDougal was trying to sell her story in June 2016, Pecker said he immediately called Cohen. He said he and Cohen were already talking a couple times a week, but after Pecker brought up McDougal, their calls became a lot more frequent. Michael was very agitated, he told the jury. It looked like he was getting a lot of pressure. He kept on calling, and each time he seemed more anxious. Pecker said he assumed Trump was asking Cohen, did we hear anything yet? Finally, Pecker testified he and Trump got on the phone. He said he told Trump to buy the rights to McDougal's story. Trump's response, I don't buy stories. Anytime you do anything like this, it always gets out. Ultimately, Pecker's company paid Karen McDougal $150,000 for the rights to her story, but never published it, all to protect Trump. Pecker's testimony resumes Thursday. Trump today complaining he's stuck in court while President Biden is out on the campaign trail.
They're keeping me in a courtroom. It's freezing, by the way. He's out campaigning, and I'm here in the courtroom sitting here, sitting up as straight as I can all day long, because you know what? It's a very unfair situation.
Before today's testimony, prosecutors accused Trump of repeatedly violating the judge's gag order, attacking witnesses, even potential jurors, and they said it's posing a very real threat to the trial. The defense insisted Trump is complying, but the judge interjected, "You're losing credibility." No immediate ruling from the judge, but prosecutors said, David, it's almost as if Trump is daring the judge to hold him in contempt and throw him in jail. And tonight, sources tell ABC News the Secret Service is preparing for that possibility. David?
Aaron Katursky leading us off here tonight. Aaron, thank you. We turn now to the violent scenes breaking out at campus protests across this country over the war in Gaza. The dramatic images tonight. Mass protests now at Columbia, NYU, MIT, Yale, the University of Minnesota, Berkeley, and several more campuses. At NYU, New York City's mayor blaming outside agitators for tossing bottles and chairs at officers. At Cal Poly Humboldt in Northern California, protesters clashing with police in riot gear, trying to get them to leave. ABC's Stephanie Ramos at Columbia tonight on the scenes playing out across this country.
Tonight, these images show protests turning violent as police struggle to control students at Cal Poly Humboldt. Demonstrations spreading from coast to coast. Protesters facing off with police in riot gear, using furniture to barricade themselves inside this academic building as officers with shields try to move in. One protester bashing police with an empty water jug. It comes after more than 150 students and faculty were arrested at NYU overnight when police moved in to clear pro-Palestinian protesters who refused to move. The crowd then marching to police headquarters. New York's Mayor Eric Adams blaming outside agitators for a violent turn in campus protests. Pointing to this video, he says, shows bottles and chairs thrown at officers.
People who peacefully protest for an issue, they're not throwing bottles and chairs. The chair dented the helmet. Can you imagine if you didn't have the helmet on?
Today, NYU ramping up security with a new barricade. Protesters are now digging in, from Berkeley to the University of Michigan to the University of Minnesota, where police today took down tents and made arrests. Colleges struggling under a new wave of solidarity protests, inspired by the movement at Columbia University.
The encampment here at Columbia University is at the center of this campus. Demonstrators are studying and sleeping here, all while workers try to set all of this up for graduation just 3 weeks away.
Protesters are demanding colleges divest from companies they say profit from ties to Israel.
We're not planning on packing up and going home. We are here because people in Palestine are going through so much worse.
Columbia offering virtual learning for the last week of classes after some Jewish students said they felt unsafe on campus, like Aiden Hunter, who tells us he understands why people are protesting.
I don't mean to diminish that, but I'd say the majority of my friends, especially Jewish friends, feel a sense of insecurity at this time.
But among the pro-Palestinian protesters here are also some Jewish Americans, like Professor Alex Wolf.
Anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are not the same thing, and that it is one thing to have beliefs, the beliefs of the Jewish religion, and it is another thing to support the policies and actions of the Israeli state.
Columbia University says they are still in talks with protesters, adding that work continues in good faith. David.
Stephanie Ramos with us again tonight on this. Stephanie, thank you. We turn now to breaking news as we're on the air here in the West. The urgent manhunt for a former police officer suspected of killing 2 people, including his ex-wife and another victim, and then abducting his 1-year-old son. There has been a dramatic late turn in this case, and here's Trevor Ault with breaking developments tonight.
Tonight, a desperate manhunt and nationwide Amber Alert is over after authorities say a former school resource officer committed an onslaught of violent crimes.
SWAT teams racing to Wiley Elementary School in southern Washington Monday, where they say 39-year-old Elias Huizar shot and killed his ex-wife, 31-year-old Amber Rodriguez. It was the same day the former police officer was due in court on a child rape charge to which he pleaded not guilty. Investigators then searching Huizar's home Monday, saying they then discovered a second body.
No information about the second victim's identity is being released at this time, as it is still an active investigation.
Huizar fleeing with his 1-year-old son, believed to be armed and considered dangerous and likely to commit more crimes. Then late today, Oregon State Patrol reporting they'd located Huizar heading south on I-5 near Eugene, Oregon, saying their pursuit ended with Huizar dying from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Oh, there's the baby!
The child safely taken into custody by state troopers.
Huizar previously worked as a police officer in Yakima, Washington. Photos posted by the department showing his first day as a school resource officer. Tonight, the department saying Huizar resigned in 2021 after, quote, receiving discipline.
David Huizar had been in custody on those previous rape charges, but he was released on $250,000 bail. And officials had feared he was going to try to flee to Mexico. David.
Trevor Ault with us tonight. Trevor, thank you. This evening, the Justice Department has now agreed to a massive settlement with the victims of disgraced gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. Here's Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, a measure of justice for some of America's best-known female Olympic gymnasts and other young women and girls, as the Justice Department agrees to pay more than $138 million to victims after the FBI failed to protect them from Dr. Larry Nassar. DOJ agreeing with 139 victims who blamed the FBI for woefully mishandling reported allegations of sexual assault against the now disgraced and convicted former USA gymnastics doctor, saying flatly, these allegations should have been taken seriously from the outset. Settlement comes more than 2 years after the country's top gymnast testified in front of Congress, slamming the FBI.
What is the point of reporting abuse if our own FBI agents are going to take it upon themselves to bury that report in a drawer?
A DOJ report found after first hearing of the allegations in 2015, FBI agents failed to flag local authorities who could have taken action, effectively allowing Nassar to continue his abuse for more than a year.
Nassar found more than 100 new victims to molest. It was like serving innocent children up to a pedophile.
The failure so profound it led to an extraordinary apology by the FBI director. This was a dark chapter for the FBI, David, a truly dark chapter.
Pierre Thomas live in Washington. Pierre, thank you. We turn now to President Biden tonight, hoping to put the state of Florida back in play this November. Tonight, the president's major abortion rights speech in Florida, with that state's new 6-week abortion ban just days now from going into effect. Mary Bruce in Florida.
President Biden today traveling to Florida just days before the state's strict new abortion law goes into effect, banning the procedure at just 6 weeks when many women don't even know they're pregnant.
There's one person responsible for this nightmare, and he's acknowledged and he brags about it, Donald Trump.
It's Biden's first major campaign speech on abortion, an issue he's putting at the center of his re-election bid. Florida, one of 21 states to ban or severely restrict abortion since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Trump boasts of appointing 3 of the justices who struck Roe down.
We broke Roe v. Wade, and we did something that nobody thought was possible. We gave it back to the states, and the states are working very brilliantly.
Today, Biden calling Trump out.
Individual state laws are working, his words, brilliantly. Brilliantly. It's a 6-week ban in Florida. It's really brilliant, isn't it? Even before women know they're pregnant. Is that brilliant?
Biden is counting on the issue to energize voters, especially women. He was introduced today by Caitlin Joshua of Louisiana. She was almost 12 weeks pregnant when she suffered a miscarriage. And when she showed up at the hospital bleeding, doctors refused to treat her, afraid of running afoul of Louisiana's near-total abortion ban.
Another hospital basically just told me they would send me home with prayers, but we're not able to medically diagnose miscarriage.
They said they would send you home with prayers,
correct,
but couldn't give you medical advice.
That's correct.
Her message to women tonight.
So abortion is absolutely on the ballot this year. If this is not a topic that you think is going to touch you or doesn't touch you currently, it absolutely will.
And Florida is one of 14 states where abortion could be on the ballot in November. The Biden campaign hoping that could put this state in play for them. They know every time the issue's been on the ballot, even in red states, abortion rights have won. David.
Mary Bruce traveling with the president in Florida. Mary, thank you. Tonight, the harrowing video here showing a woman in desperate need. Police have arrested a suspect in Oregon. Doorbell video showing the suspect picking up the victim and carrying her away. Here's Kana Whitworth.
Tonight, this terrifying doorbell camera showing the moment police say a man kidnapped a woman in Oregon. Around 10:45 p.m. Sunday night, a woman seen panicked, ringing the doorbell in a Portland suburb and screaming for help when a man runs up from behind and grabs her, pulling the woman back to the street and out of the frame.
A mother and daughter who live in the home say they saw the woman's fear captured on their camera.
She looked scared in her voice. You can tell that she was frantic and she needed help. Well, right as I see it, I was like this is bad. Like, we gotta call 911.
She says they don't know the people in the video, but authorities tonight say the woman in dire need knew the man who was after her. And tonight, she's okay. Authorities taking Mark Anthony Fredrickson into custody, charging him with kidnapping and harassment. Hillsborough police saying they are not releasing the identity of the woman or their relationship, but that she is now safe.
And David, authorities say that the suspect and the victim knew each other, that this wasn't a random attack, and there's no ongoing threat to the public. David.
We're just glad she's okay. Kana, thank you. Overseas tonight, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich has been ordered to remain jailed in Moscow until at least the end of June after losing an appeal of his pretrial detention. He was arrested more than a year ago now on espionage charges that he and the U.S. both, of course, deny. When we come back here tonight, the images just coming in, the fiery plane crash, a vintage plane going down. We're also tracking severe storms across several states in a moment. Tonight, first responders are now on the scene of a fiery plane crash in Fairbanks, Alaska. The vintage Douglas C-54 going down just south of the airport there, just after takeoff. The FAA tonight saying 2 people were on board. So far, no sign of survivors. The NTSB already deploying a team of investigators to the scene. When we come back here tonight, tracking severe storms, possible tornadoes across several states. And we take you under the sea tonight, how an octopus communicates with a human. To the index in severe storms taking aim at the Midwest. Possible tornadoes, damaging winds, and hail from Texas to Iowa Thursday and Friday. Dallas, Kansas City, Des Moines, all in the path. Temperatures warming up for much of the country. 80s and 90s from Arizona all the way over to Florida. 50s and 60s in the Northeast. When we come back here tonight, a remarkable view under the sea. The secrets tonight of the octopus. Finally tonight, the secrets of the octopus. Tonight, an extraordinary and never-before-seen view into the life of an octopus. A new National Geographic documentary series, Secrets of the Octopus, spent 2 years and 1,500 hours underwater documenting octopuses from 5 countries. Marine biologist Dr. Alex Schnell following this octopus in Australia's Great Barrier Reef for weeks, incredibly gaining the octopus's trust and forging a bond.
When she reached out her arm and put her suckers on my hand, it just felt like a life-changing moment.
Documenting behavior never before captured, the octopus grabbing a shell for protection.
I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was screaming underwater, grabbing that shell to use it as a shield. It was such a beautiful example of really complex intelligence.
Taking cover in a coconut. The 3-part series from our partners at Nat Geo shows how the octopus survives, camouflaging themselves from predators, sharks.
Their brain is connected directly to muscles in their skin. The octopus can produce an endless array of patterns and colors.
Tonight, Dr. Schnell says they hope the series, its groundbreaking discoveries, will help in conservation efforts, revealing that the octopus even communicates with humans.
To my surprise, she responded. She had an understanding of what I was trying to communicate to her. It just felt like magic.
Secrets of the Octopus now streaming on Hulu and Disney+. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Moore, America's most watched newscast.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.